Jordan Myska Allen, I'm so excited to have you on Illuminating Life. Thank you for being here.
I'm really, really happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let you introduce Relateful Camp, but the reason I was so excited to have you on is because you just held a gathering in Texas. I really wanted to go to it, and then I ended up not being able to. And so I think for me, I'm selfishly wanting to vicariously experience the experience as closely as possible through having you on and just asking you a bunch of questions, both about the event itself, about your experience in it, others' experience, but also from maybe an organizational perspective or a gathering structural perspective. You were also just at the last Constructing Consciousness event a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I just had this really keen interest in learning from others that are doing similar types of events and what we can learn and share and be in relationship with, and hopefully viewers can yeah, take away something from that as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm happy to share everything. And one thing that I'm like stepping into that came up, that's been coming up over the past few weeks in a bunch of different ways, is just really kind of owning how amazing I am and the things I've created are. I think I've used a kind of cloak of humility to stay connected with people, and I'm trying not to do that. And so I'm just kind of pre-warning listeners that like there may be a kind of overcorrection in the dialectic where I'm just but man, it's easy with Relateful Camp because it was just so good. It was I knew it was going to be good, and it was even better than I expected it to be. But yeah, I'm happy. I really hope that people hearing us can take something from it that's not just like, wow, I should go to Relateful Camp, which of course they're invited next year, but like more like, oh, cool, there's a neat way to do events differently, or here's a way to think about things differently, or think about organizing, or all of that.
Perfect. Love it. I've also done that cloak of humility thing. So maybe I'll go out on my edge as well and try to be more like you in this moment. So maybe can you just start with the basics, the who, what, when, where, and why of Relateful Camp, just to give an overview?
Yeah. So the Relateful, I have two companies right now. The Relateful company is the one that I've been running for the past decade or more, and it's um, in a way, it's a cool, weird, unique structure on its own. But essentially, we have 40 or 50 facilitators scattered across the world. We've been leading sessions online since 2015, sessions in Austin since probably 2012. And when I say sessions, they're in relatefulness. So it's like mindful relating. And we're paying attention to what it's like here and now, your nodding, your movement, what that impact is on me, what our we vibe is like, being able to kind of give language to the in the moment experience, from just like my gut's a little nervous imagining all these people hearing it, to this is what this is what awareness is like, you know, showing up as us. How's it for you?
Mm.
So we've been practicing and experimenting and doing all sorts of really cool, crazy things for a long time, and this has been a long time coming. So that's the Relateful Company. Bunch of facilitators and a bunch of people training and practicing, and from all kind of different. It's actually a pretty uniquely, what I found out about at Relateful Camp, it's a uniquely talented group. There's some incredible musicians. There's like a world-class entomologist who was like blowing my mind with facts about bugs. Uh, there's just like, yeah, just an incredibly talented group of people that are involved in this, in exploring what it's like to be more conscious as relators, which I think is unique in the world. I mean, there's nicely a lot of experiments going on, but still not widespread. Like you and I both love integral philosophy, and integral theory and philosophy kind of picked up on this we space practices because they're like, wait, we have all sorts of things to like be more conscious personally. We have all sorts of behaviors, and you can, you know, if you want to biohack and get your body better in various ways, there's tons of science and history on that. We have a growing awareness of systems and how to change incentives, but there's not a lot of effort that's been placed on how to, from the inside, like culture as a verb better. And yeah, we can study anthropologically or ethno-anthropologically, like, but it's different to be like, right here, right now, how do we do our weeing better?
Yeah.
How do we do it better, Tucker? I've been talking a bunch, but we'll check. Let's do it right
I think
now.
you're doing great. Yeah. Yeah, I invite at any point if you want to like pluck in some of the relateful techniques or whatever, feel free to do that. But yeah, is there a relationship between this and circling?
Yeah, absolutely. So my history was first in in meditation. I grew up in a Christian household. It was very, very positive Christian experience, which is also unique for a lot of like kind of spiritual seekers. So I still have a really close, deep relationship with God and Jesus, and I'm happy using those words. I got into a course in miracles, integral theory. Eventually, that turned me onto circling, which was my real entree into this kind of really looking at interconnection as an object you can look at. So we sometimes talk about you have a subjective experience, like you're like of being angry, and suddenly you can see it and be like, oh, I actually can name that I'm not just stuck in anger. I am a bigger being that has an angry experience right now. And we call that like making the subject object. And so this circling was my way into seeing intersubjects and making the intersubjects interobjects.
Mhm. Yeah. And so when you're with a group of people in something like Relateful Camp that's multiple days long, how do you, what's the new subject object in that context?
Can you say more about the question? What's the new subject
Yeah.
object?
So right now we are in an interpersonal relationship, right? But then when you expand that out to the collective, like, is there a way of starting to see the collective as a series of inner parts, for example, or is there sort of an upshift or a different framing that one can begin to be in relationship and relatefulness with others in a collective, especially a collective that it's, um, evolving and living and unfolding together over multiple days?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So the first thing I want to say is one of the unique things that we do with relatefulness. I'm going to say unique, and who knows if it's unique. I don't know how in today's day and age, when we're aware of the billions of people on the planet, like anyone could have done a thorough search to say like ours is the best or most amazing, or so whatever. Like take all of that as a pre-frame, and then I'm going to say unique and best, and people can do whatever they want with it. Um, but yeah, one thing that we do that's really cool is allow a bunch of different frames on what's happening to be present simultaneously. And secretly, I think this is always already the case. But if you go to like a family constellation workshop, they're trying to offer a particular interpretive framework on the collective happening. And the idea is let's all get inside of that framework together. Similarly, if you go to like a church service, like there's a frame that we're all in worship together. And with relateful sessions and also with relateful camp, we keep that you like super open. We're in a sense it's construct aware where we're like, yeah, this you're enacting a construct on the happening, and there's an infinite number of choices on that, and we're going to allow those to co-arise. I sometimes I almost like there's a mutual independence. So your understanding, you might be looking at it and having this kind of internal family systems lens where you're like, all of these people are parts of me. And then, Jordan has all these people that are parts of him too. And they're all happy. Like we're all doing an IFS process together. And so it's like crazy, all the connections. And, it's like, whatever, we had 80 people. So it's like, 80 combinatorial connections. And oh my God, like, or you might be having a thing where you're like, I'm here to heal this awful thing that happened to me. And I know no other place that I can be as honest and authentic, which is what I need to heal. And someone else might be like, I'm here to just love what is. And someone else might be like, I'm here to do my spiritual meditative practice. And we're like, look, those all get to fit. We've kind of built a manifold or an API to allow these to all communicate with each other without trying to dominate each other, or rather, the attempts to dominate each other are generative. And so, which is not to say that everything is equal. Like we have a meta frame which we say is better and is dominating all of those. And we're really happy to say that. And particularly, we say we're aimed at truth and we're aimed at love,
Mm-hmm.
and where those are one thing, where truth and love are two sides of the same coin, because often people think of truth as kind of masculine or harsh, or clarifying, and love as like soft or inclusive or whatever. And I'm like, they're the same. They, yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm noticing that I still want to build the context of the who, what, when, where, and why, just to give a brief overview. But I also am feeling really drawn by this question because to me, this is really the heart of what I'm working through this week after the last CC gathering. And I'm in relationship with this inquiry around how to create a meta structure that is formed enough and explicit enough that can invite in a clarity of the multiplicity of other forms and structures that can all interplay and interpenetrate simultaneously. And so it's sort of a sense of like the polarity between the form and the formless, and how to find the sweet spot and how to maybe oscillate on that spectrum depending on the context and the moment. And so I have so many questions around that. So feel free to take that thread, or we can bookmark that and come back to it also.
Okay, yeah, no, I love it. That's so important. And I think it is something that we're doing really, really well. And then I do want to share. I don't even know if I have good language for it. It's much more of a kind of like embodied way of being.
Right.
Look, we put like a bookmark of like one of the big keys is genuinely sharing power.
Mm.
And and we'll go into that. But okay, let me briefly set the scene more. So Relateful Camp, we rent out a summer camp for 5 days in Trinity, Texas, which is, in the middle of nowhere, basically. And it's absolutely beautiful, like a bird sanctuary, literally pink birds like flying through the airs on this lake, and like we're staying in cabins. There's a mix of what you'd expect from like a personal growth type workshop, transformational classes. They're all in kind of the spirit of relatefulness. Like we have our staff leading relateful sessions. We have our staff are leading like a comedy workshop, but with the spirit of relatefulness, or a music workshop with the spirit of relatefulness. And then we have a track of people leading just all sorts of stuff, like whatever they want to, whatever they think would benefit the people there. There's also simultaneously horseback riding, swimming, canoeing, shooting guns, because we're in Texas and it's fucking great. And it's awesome having like Europeans come and be like, there's one woman who was like, went to the shooting range during the like session that was open for that, and she was like, just being with her nervous system, being around the guns, like she's like, I can't shoot, I just want to like feel like all the like screaming in my body as I'm around this. So yeah, like all these kind of activities, and so this created this, and then we have, so there's a spirit of like a conference or a festival where you kind of pick out of 3 or 4 things happening simultaneously what you want to go to, or just hang out and have cool conversations or journal or meditate. And then there's these nightly programs like dances and campfires and lightning talks and these things. So there was this, and then we're sharing meals together. The food was really great. I was impressed. And yeah, 4 or 5 days of this, and who, what, when, a couple weeks ago, where I did that, and why. Okay, so I'm taking a moment to really connect to the why, because the why really matters, and I feel utterly inadequate speaking to it. There is a sense of wholeness in me, and that I think relatefulness as a practice holds, that sees the world as it sees the world really intimately, and it's like, wow, there's a crazy amount of beauty, there's a ridiculous amount of suffering, like we're hurting, it's all okay, and we get to make it better. And I wanted us to really land that as a community, like in that, and source everything that we do from there. It's all okay, and we're making it better. And all okay includes, there's a wild amount of heartbreak and tragedy. And that's the thing that really struck me. And also on top of that, like we can do this all from a place of flow. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be grinding, overwhelm, burnout. And these are the things that blew my mind. Was like I set that intention and I continuously contexted that in the invite, in the like emails promoting it, in the email that gives people a context, in the way we organized it as a team, in all of that. And so like I'm like now I'm taking credit for that more. But there was also this kind of magical thing where we really did it. And it was mind blowing. It was a peak experience for I think a lot of people. And for me, I was in a kind of upper limit overwhelm
Mm.
where like there was a moment while I was walking down the trail, nothing particular was happening. I was just walking, and it was like I was like almost like went numb with the simple goodness of it all,
Mm.
like just all of the happening. There was another moment. So it was cool because that was just a mundane moment. Then there was another moment on the dance floor where it was just like I'm like whatever. Ecstatic dance is fun, but I'm like I'm not into like weird temple dub. That's not like my jam. I'm into like rap and like Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift and stuff. And so
You're a big Drake fan, is that right?
yeah, no, hell no. Actually, I'm definitely a huge Kendrick fan, and in the recent spat, I'm definitely all on Kendrick. But there's one Drake album that I like. I'm not against Drake. It's just like obviously Kendrick is orders of magnitude better.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave that as is.
Kendrick is a good one for embodying the wholeness of humanity. Like he raps about Eckhart Tolle and a new earth and things like that, and meditating. He has been forever, and he's like embracing the full range of yeah, like going. He's like in this Drake thing. He's like, should I be going to war? And he's like, he's going into dark places and he's exploring them. He's exploring his psyche. He's talking about, I got daddy issues. How about you? Like that's on me. Stuff like that. And so yeah, that was the thing that was like someone could hear what I'm saying and think, oh, we kind of just did a retreat and we went into some positive like flow bliss state for 5 days, like big deal. But the thing that was a big deal about it was that we were fully going into all the dark places. I mean, the practice of relatefulness is like a way of being much more honest with yourself and each other and giving and receiving high quality feedback moment to moment. And so it's extremely challenging. And it really causes people to look hard at things they've been identity level things they've been holding on to for their entire lives. So people were undergoing like deep transformative processes. A woman that was like finally facing nihilism for the first time, like this, like what is it all for? A kind of existential dread. A woman and a man trying to work on dissociative identity disorder, which was surprising. A woman who had just I'm trying to think of like I'm trying to think of whatever. I'm not going to say these other examples because I'm thinking of privacy and things like that. But like, really, people are working on really dark, hard things and coming out of that into these beautiful places. One of my facilitators was like feeling this old habit of like feeling belonging and then being like, oh shit, I need to like push away and like this is extremely confronting. And I didn't know this was happening, but she'd been in it for a couple hours, and I was like gonna go to the horses and do horseback riding. And I was like, hey, you want to go ride horses? Or I think she was like, I could tell she was in something, and I fell into like my intuition of what's calling. I was like, you want to go ride horses? And she was like, yeah. And then we rode horses. It was like that kind of movement of like from this crazy deep pain confronting a childhood wound to like, oh, now we can just be with some horses. Like it's almost like equestrian therapy, but like not because we're doing therapy, because that's what's here to do.
Yeah. Beautiful, Jordan. I just feel so lit up, and my level of FOMO has increased 1,000% in the past 10 minutes. So I'm gonna fuck you at the same time.
I'm really glad you brought that up because another context that I set and like kind of propagated it in advance and throughout was a concept that I'm sure other people have come up with, but I made up a while back called the significance of missing out, SOMO.
Nice.
So whenever you're feeling FOMO or whatever, like you've chosen something and that thing is more important to you than any other thing that's going on, including all the awesome things that are going on.
Mhm.
Maybe it's like even something that really sucks, right? Like you have to take care of your ailing grandparent. Um, but that you've chosen that. That's more significant to you than the crazy cool thing that you could be doing instead. So
Yeah.
it's a way of like allowing the truth of that, of the missing out to inform the goodness of the moment we're in.
Love
You,
it.
it forces you to actually claim it and say, I've chosen this. So that can be hard for people, to take personal responsibility for whatever's happening. And there's obviously ways that can go wrong, but
So I have a question. When you have 80 plus people and many of whom are choosing to go into the darkness as maybe not consciously, but as a flow state vehicle towards a collective and individual peak experience, that almost sound like the visual that's coming up is just like a bunch of fireworks going off. And I imagine that there can be times when that's dangerous on some level. There's psychological danger, risk involved. So as a organizer slash facilitator slash a person kind of taking the ownership of this experience, what did you do and what did your team do to scaffold enough support, enough structure, enough holding to allow for that process to take place without it turning into a giant shit show, essentially, where, um,
yeah.
yeah. And how do you prevent doing too much of that, where then it just becomes a one giant facilitated workshop and there's not really that emergent collective aspect?
Yeah. So I think that some of the frames around like the holding and the safety and the fireworks themselves are mistaken in ways that engender the popping off.
Mhm.
Even if it's reacted through this control A, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of it is it's gonna sound really theoretical maybe when I talk about it, but it feels really true where I'm like, um, a lot of it is in like the structure of the event itself and the context that we set throughout of like, there's nowhere to get, nothing particular to do. And I've been in communities that had that, but secretly privileged darkness over lightness, for example, or depth over superficiality. And we just make a really big stand of like, there's no preference. The superficial is just as good as the deep, and just as deep as the deep, and just as superficial as the superficial. And this creates a context where like socially, you're not being pushed to go past your edge. So it's like, hey, and this is a moment to moment thing. This is training our facilitators, our leadership over and over the past decade to be like, look, if I say, hey, are you up for some advice? And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be like, no, that's not a yes. Or whatever. Like these are examples. Like if I see someone, if I'm like, if somebody is like, oh man, there's something I'm really not comfortable sharing, and some newbie is like, oh come on, you can't say it and then not tell us. The facilitator is gonna be like, well, wait, how is it to share that you don't want to share? Let's be with that instead. Like we're actively putting the brakes when we see somebody pushing past their boundary, their own internal boundary, and not needing to get anywhere, really genuinely not needing to change anything. And if I feel I need to change something, get anywhere, make sure people have a good time, I just go deep into me. What's up with me? Let me be with the thing in me that's driving that. Because it's almost certainly not, um, from a clear, loving, open heart. Okay, so I want to say one more thing about the structure, and then I'll name some actual structural pieces that answer your question on a concrete level. So also the structure of like even calling it Relateful Camp, like we're not doing a transformational festival. This is not supposed to fucking blow your mind and give you the deepest psychedelic holotropic blah blah blah. Like this is a fun place where we're gonna do a lot of cool stuff, go deep, experience the whole range of human experience, and we're gonna hang out and we're gonna chill and we're gonna relax and we're going to embody that in everything we do, like in the way that we talk about and do dance, right? It's like the fact that I'm playing Justin Bieber or whoever, that I'm playing Drake and Kendrick at the dance party, it sets a context that this is normal. This is the same music that you would listen to if you went downtown to Rainy Street in Austin. And maybe it's a better, I mean, I'm a better DJ, obviously. Uh, But yeah, and I'm thinking about the flow in a different way or whatever. It does it, but there's something about making it really normal and integrating those pieces of now go on a zip line, now go swimming, now play guitar. Like there's there's a sense of making the deep diving extremely normal and being able to move fluidly in and out of it that makes it a much healthier environment and makes it so that it's not fireworks. Okay, now let me say two actual structural pieces that are a better answer to what you're saying. For most people, although I think what I just said is the real answer. That what I just said is what gave rise to these structural pieces. We did a half-hour connection crew every single day. So we took everyone and we divided them up so that there's someone that I've trained that's on my staff in every single group, and we ended up having two in most. And then we made sure we divided up people into those groups that were like their kind of tribes or their homerooms, and we made a fun like silly show of it the first night, like gave them silly names, like we were, like mythological beasts, like the Baku or the like griffins or the, dragons or whatever. So each one had a silly name. We had like did a big ceremony. It took like 10 minutes, but like you're in your group and then every day you have half an hour and I set the context up of like whatever you guys need to do. Like if you need to talk about Netflix shows, talk about Netflix shows. If you want to go deep and explore something that's been troubling you or some exciting thing, go for that. Doesn't matter. Like this is just whatever's supportive. And here's a time in the schedule before lunch, 12 to 12:30, that everyone in the camp is going to be with their connection crew. So there's a sense of structure and then a sense of freedom. And like in this structure on the event, do whatever you want. And in fact, if you guys would rather meet at 6 a.m. because you guys all like that, meet then. That's fine. You can skip that if you want. Just do it together. Um, and then there was no pressure on them to go be in it, but except for my staff, I was like, you guys do have to be in it. And then let us know. Like then we have an ear in of like if somebody's going through something that needs a little extra attention from the whole, we have tons of eyes and ears on the ground to let us know.
Mhm.
That was so successful. It's something I've been wanting to do forever. It's something I helped run a different festival and I've always wanted to do it and it never quite worked with the leadership there. And I was so fucking happy. It was so great. The main thing is that like new people often get lost in these kinds of events and they end up only hanging out with each other because there's all these old people that haven't, maybe like people have been practicing online for 10 years, never met each other. They're so excited to see each other that they don't end up making bonds with the people who are there for the first time. And then those new people often bounce out. And that's not only is that not good from like a business standpoint, it's really not good from the community standpoint because we end up getting more and more like exclusive. We have our cell membrane gets like more and more reified. And this kind of structure just really made sure that wouldn't happen. And it worked. It was fantastic. People loved it. Kind of universal.
Yeah.
Also, importantly, like with my facilitators, I was like, look, you guys, this is your connection crew as well. So you are a facilitator, be yourself, bring your gifts, but you don't have to lead this group. It's like now that we're in the structure, it's a self-organizing thing. And if the thing that needs to happen is you get a bunch of attention because you're going through a struggly piece, that's great. So there's often a kind of holding of duality or paradox of like, yes, like there's a structure. Yes, there's a facilitator in there who knows who to talk to if there's a problem. And you're just another person.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did something similar for the Pacific Integral's GTC alumni gathering, implemented a similar structure that seemed to work really well to mix up the different cohorts so all the different, alumni cohorts didn't just blend together or didn't just cohere together and they're the people that they already knew. I'm just curious. So, okay, I have like so many different questions coming up. This is, by the way, I'm just loving this. I'm loving your wisdom. I feel like I'm soaking in a lot on a personal level. I feel like I'm growing and expanding just listening to you. So thank you so much, Jordan. This has been awesome already.
I'm
Um,
glad to hear it. And it's fun for me because like, I send out this weekly newsletter and last night I was writing it and I was like, I don't have anything, like I know I have stuff to share, but I don't have anything I want to say.
Oh,
And it's really nice to be here and get this feedback from you right now and be like, oh, I actually have tons to say.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, real quick, just on it's a structural question, but so there's you, which is you're the CEO of the organization, and were you also like the MC and the person that was corralling folks and sort of like being the visible front person, or and then
No,
what I guess I'm curious about like the family tree or the power hierarchy structure that is there.
this is a great question because it's also really, really important. It's something, and it's something it matters. Like, okay, so stepping back a second, I really don't like being told what to do. And therefore, whatever, I'm Texan and like grew up quasi-libertarian and stuff. So it's like, of course, it's probably some weird, psychological shadow shit as well. But like that means I'm pretty skeptical of like the guru model, at least for like Western culture, or at least for like people at a certain stage of development and higher. I get the value of it, and especially in like having someone to basically point out where your ego is still like secretly has the reins. So I'm like often doing, in fact, one of my sessions I gave was like how not to start a cult. Because I think all of us are susceptible. Like if you're charismatic and you have some spiritual wisdom, like there's a psychological dynamic, there's a cultural dynamic that where like you want somebody to tell you what to do, and you don't, and you also want to be the guy that or gal or they that tells people what to do. And we're in this weird culture where there's like not for many, many people, there's not a lot of there's not a spiritual authority in their life, and there's not a spiritual community. And so there's just we're starved. So I do a lot of things to kind of make relatefulness about relating and not about a particular like charismatic leader, um, or not about me or Valerie or Bloss or Annabeth or whoever. Um, and so that's continually happening. So I stepped out of I'm officially, yeah, I'm the CEO and the founder, but I really stepped out of the day-to-day operations about a year and a half ago to start this other company, Uptrust. And Valerie is the director who when it's always been a very self-organizing kind of Teal, Frederick Laloux, DDO, holacracy inspired organization. And we can talk about that, but that's a whole nother thing. Um, but whenever there is a need for somebody, Valerie's really on the day to day now. But even she kind of like is really good at handing over power when it wants and needs to be handed over. So I was like, I realized that we could do this. This summer camp was like affordable in a way because my sister hosted her wedding there, and I was like, wow, we can do this. I think we can do it without taking a crazy financial risk. It's been building for a couple years. I've been knowing that this needs to happen for a long time, and just kind of waiting. Like different people have suggested it, and the energy wasn't right, and then the energy was right for Relateful Camp. It was like, boom, now we're doing it. And I was like, hey, I think we can do it. And Annabeth, one of my facilitators, who also is the head of the Relateful Studio in Austin, was like, I want to do it. Like I'm picking it up. And so we're like, great. And we, whatever, set aside the funds, work out the deal. And she really, really made it happen. So like she and Philip and Liz on the admin team. So there's like
Can I interrupt real quick? So that's yeah, I'm interested in all that. And I'm also more curious about when 80 people arrive on site and they're there and everyone's unpacking their luggage and stuff. Like, what is the initial first couple of hours that lets people know, hey, you're here, we've got you, here's what's happening, you go here, this is what's gonna unfold. And how do you like hold enough structure, and who are the people that are taking the lead on holding the original or the initial shaping of what unfolds in order for sort of the collective flow? It's almost like winding up a yo-yo, right? And then like the
yeah.
yo-yo yo-yos after a while.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I want to try to convey to people is that like there's never a particular moment, and there's never not a moment where you're like setting context for the whole event.
Mhm.
Absolutely everything we're doing all the time, the way I'm responding to this question, my tone, my eye contact is always like telling us how our interactive is interacting, how our collective is going to be, what our values are. We're always navigating that, always, 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 moment, 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 boom, never without stop. And so the structure that I think it matters. So I'm still going to answer your question, but like, so Annabeth did a bunch of stuff to make it so that she could just enjoy the Relateful Camp.
Mm.
So she got volunteer. She really hand selected volunteers and gave them a full scholarship to the program, and basically in the mentality of like, this is a $1,300 or $1,500 camp. So essentially we're paying you $1,500. Um, and I'm going to make sure that like that I would have hired you for $1,500. So we had some really, really amazing volunteers that she had set up in advance. And then she got Dara, who's just an epic event planner and one of our facilitators, who loves to be in the mix, like as it's happening. Like she thrives in that environment to take over. So before the event started, Annabeth was like, right now, if anybody needs anything, there's a point person wearing a pink hat, or there's Dara. And like the point person was scheduled in advance. So she was complete. She just didn't need to do anything. And so like I had handed it over to Valerie. Valerie handed it over to Annabeth. Annabeth handed it over to the volunteers and Dara. Dara handed it over to the volunteers. So all of these, like every single one of us is available. We all know what's going on. We all have the full context, all the information needed, or at least we know who to point to. And none of us, and then there's like the particular volunteers whose job it is to make sure that the shit is happening. And they have very specific tasks that they know what to do and how to do it. And this creates like a really amazing, like empowered structure where like there's tons of where nobody has to, like everybody's holding the ball. No one has to hold the ball. No one is overwhelmed. And we all ended up fucking more nourished and like less tired at the end of the time. It was nuts. So yeah, like I led the opening session, I led some sessions, but it was so relaxing for me. I slept in every morning.
Mm.
I haven't been able to sleep. As you know, I have a toddler and a baby, and I haven't been to sleep in like 3 years. And like it was crazy, like 5 days in a row where I just slept and got a full great night's sleep. Like what? And there
Beautiful.
was, there was a lot of structural. So basically what happened was like people could arrive anytime between 3 and 7. And there were volunteers there were a bunch of volunteers. We also, there was a camp staff that was there. So there was like an abundance of staff. And we also had like a training day or a staff day for all of our facilitators got to come in a day early. Um, and we all just hung out together and went over stuff and set a context. So again, they were fully participating as participants most of the time, but a lot of them would lead like one session or two sessions throughout the event. So they were stepping into leadership for a couple hours on a particular day, but they were also kind of there as a participant, but also like in a pinch could be able to help somebody if they were struggling.
Amazing.
So all of that, just there's a lot of just trusting people, empowering them, and then trusting them. Like take care of yourself, take care of each other.
Yeah. Beautiful. So I'm curious when I saw on the website, there are some pre-selected events or workshops or talks or whatever that were happening at certain times. Where, how, and when, and what was the process of enabling people to sort of step up within the moment, emergent ideas and kind of co-creating and on the fly? How did that take shape, and what are some examples of how that played out?
Yeah, great. So there were kind of three layers. There was like getting our sessions as a company, sourcing those, which is whatever. Everyone can imagine how to do that. Then there was like sending in email out or in the invitations, letting everyone know any participant, there's an emergent schedule that people can submit sessions to. And so we had things I never would have thought of. Like this entomologist was like, are bugs relateful? And he had some mind-blowing insights. Like it was so cool. So yeah, there was some emergent stuff that we could pre-plan. So we had a printed schedules, a big printed schedule, That was so, and the second layer was that emergent stuff like in advance. And the third layer was like at camp, we really encourage people if there's something that needs to happen, put it on the schedule. And so there were sticky notes on the main chow hall where everyone's eating 3 meals a day. There's a big printed schedule where like you could put where people were going to check off and oh, what am I going to do for the next afternoon? And you could like update and say, hey, here's a new emergent thing. And a lot of people, so like one that I went to was one of my facilitators, David Swedlow, decided suddenly he wanted to do like a movie night thing where he had 15-minute clips. He didn't realize there was going to be like an awesome projector that we could do stuff like this. So we had three 15-minute clips in a discussion. And he just was like last minute, like threw it on the schedule. And then people that he knew would be interested, he just personally was like, hey, come to my movie night. And I was like, okay. Or another one, there was a group that wanted to do like a flirting and seduction or something, and so they sat outside of the chow hall and tried to seduce people into their session, and that went really well.
That's
So it's
cool.
just like a bunch of stuff like that.
Can I ask a question about that? So I found that a lot of these types of gatherings that usually the extroverted leaning, often male-bodied people are the ones that are most vocal and active around offering these types of sessions. I'm curious how that worked at Relateful Camp, if there was any awareness or structures in sort of really initiating those that might be quieter or want to be generally tend towards receptivity or introversion, and allowing those folks to step forward and share their gifts and their wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say two things about this. Well, I want to say three things about this. The first is like, I'm not convinced that we always should be encouraging the quiet people to come forward. Like maybe that's what they prefer to do. And if they're more receptive, like great, like they're there to receive. Like as like one metaphor would be like when I was a musician for years and I was traveling around and like it's way more fun to have an audience of where a bunch of people like where it's like a mix of people, some non-musicians and some musicians, than like all musicians. So like, yeah, I just think there's a really good place for quietness and receptivity, and I don't want to like bias towards being active and leading stuff as somehow more valuable. Um, Second, we're really lucky at the Relateful company. Well, we're lucky, and I've obviously cultivated this in some way. Where like we just have a ton of women in leadership. Like I mentioned, like there's just there's just a ton of amazing female bodied leaders. And this, I think, really does permission or inspire, encourage other female bodied people to like step up and lead. Um, and then the third thing is, I think to say kind of a yes to what you're saying, like there is a responsibility, I think, at least maybe not a responsibility, but an opportunity, like an opportunity that I would hate to miss to encourage and support people who have awesome shit to offer that don't automatically put it forward. And so I do that a lot. So like we have this one woman, Jillian Grassi, is this like incredible harpist, and she brought her harp.
Mm.
And she's like you can see her on Spotify. She's just like a singer-songwriter with harp. So she we did some lightning talks, and she didn't realize, like she was like, oh, I didn't want to like kind of show off, and so she did a lightning talk about the harp, and then kind of played. We were all like, play a song, so we invited her forward. But I was like, man, it's so meaningful when she plays. And I was like, for the closing ceremony, will you open us up with your harp? And she was so touched and like, yeah, hell yeah, like this is it. That's the perfect kind of way to play. Um, there's other people like with even like Valerie. I was like, hey, we need you to lead more sessions. Like you're only leading originally she was only planning to lead like one or two sessions. So like, I want you to lead something every day. Um, I've heard even like Diane Hamilton will talk about how some like often she's this incredible Zen facilitator, and she'll feel like she gets a lot of flack, and people don't kind of defer to her leadership unless there's a dude in the room kind of backing her up, someone like Rob McNamara, you know.
Mhm.
I think that's real. You know, women have a harder time in our society, um, on by and large still. And it helps when there's a really powerful male that says, like, this person's awesome. I'm assisting them in this session, even if assisting just means quietly supporting. And so I do a lot of that and I talk about that.
Beautiful. Yeah, love it. I noticed that I want to be really nerdy and ask a nerdy question, but it's about fun. And a part of me wants to be like, Jordan, can you tell me about the psychotechnology of having fun and how that creates new potentials that might not arise otherwise?
Can we
Like
have fun with it?
intellect human voice.
Can you have more fun in even asking the question? And then we'll answer it as we're doing it.
Why is having fun so seeming why do we have to there's almost a part of me that feels angry of like, why do we have to pay money to go to a camp to have fun, to recognize that that having fun is so deeply satisfying?
Right.
It's kind of insane.
Where do we go wrong? How are we so fucked up that we have to pay money to have to realize that fun is so good?
Yeah.
How's
Yeah.
your anger?
Um, I think I'm gonna repress it and then just allow it to come out in some weird shadowy way in a couple of months from now. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. You could be sarcastic or like tease me or um,
I'm good. Just answer my fucking question, Jordan.
nice. There you go. I think the answer is failure. We we failure is, to quote Whitest Boy Alive, is the best way to learn. And it's really hard for us to fail. And so when we're having fun, we're in a context where it's okay to fail. We don't have to succeed. We don't have to excel. We can fuck around and find out. This is why I promote the meme of fucking around and finding out. Uh, and then we can actually learn and we grow really, really fast.
Yeah. So, I mean, having been to some of your circles and many different types of authentic relating-ish types, yeah.
Also, of course, we don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay, unpause.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I would say is it like one of the things that leaves me, and maybe this is just because I haven't stepped up and been the change I want to see in the world, but often when I'm a part of a circling session or an authentic relator, some sort of we space practice, the tone gets pretty serious often. Not all the time, of course. Sometimes it really becomes fun, but often it's like there's this desire to have some sort of a state experience, whether one would call it that or not. And to do that, one needs to sort of they have the sense that they need to drop into some deeper place that often involves a level of seriousness, and that can be really beautiful and powerful. But I guess what I'm curious about is at the Relateful Camp, how does that how do they coexist where the fun and the laughter and the silliness and the play can coexist and co-arise either like in the same experience or right next to each other, and two different things that are happening simultaneously. And it seems like maybe it's even asking the question is trying to make more sense of something that is so natural to the human experience. And at the same time, I imagine that there's a lot of, we space-ish
Yeah.
gatherings where things do get like really serious and heavy, and they never really break into that sense of joyful lightheartedness.
Yeah. So one thing is just modeling it
Mm-hmm.
much as possible. Like the people who are perceived with the highest power for whatever reason, being able and willing to have fun and be silly and be goofy and like and be normal. That just goes a really long way. Another thing is not being scared of trauma. When there is a mindset that you have to suddenly get really serious and like make sure to be trauma informed, uh, as soon as someone is in a freeze or as soon as some like deep childhood pain comes out, it's really hard to have fun.
Mhm.
And it becomes a dominant frame. Now it's not about whatever's present, whatever's real, whatever's true, whatever's good. It's about this preconceived notion of how to be with a person is dominating our social space. That preconceived notion is wise. I don't want to exclude it by any means. There's a ton of research, there's a ton of wisdom, there's a ton of training that people have, and we want to say hell yes to that. It's the transcend and include. But now that we know that, what's available here? And so, for example, like from a kind of trauma-informed mindset, you're like, okay, positive resources and nervous system regulation and grounding, these are, and like titration and pendulation, these are all like really positive ways of helping a person in a past their window of tolerance, for example. I'm trying to use the industry terms so that people are like, oh, he actually does know what he's talking about. But I actually kind of like hate using these terms for the reasons I just said. Um, yeah, so from when you're, oh yeah, you're like, oh, all that stuff. Well, guess what? Like having fun, laughter, playfulness, when it's the right kind of tuned in, is incredibly supportive in all those ways, can help people titrate, for example. And so there's a lot of that like transcend and include that really supports or yeah, that really supports having a space that's willing to have fun. And the last thing I want to say, I'm so apologetic and not that like all of my answers are like super long-winded and like multi-parted and complex, but it feels like the truth. It feels like what actually supports this is a bunch of like really wide-ranging yeses. Yes to this and to this. Yes to this and to this. So yeah, the last yes I want to say about this is it has just left my brain. It was a really good one.
Mm. Supporting people.
Yes, thank you. So the other thing is that in there's the same way that like, okay, so our modern culture is very good at being polite. And so people get into certain kinds of practices of authenticity and they're like, oh, I can finally not be polite. And they basically overcorrect and go too hard in the dialectical movement in the opposite direction. Um, I think actual relatefulness says hell yes to politeness and non-politeness. We really need both. Like, because what happens in integral language is you get this pre-trans fallacy where like people think being non-polite is good, even when it means being super egocentric and super unattuned. But politeness is an incredible technology for allowing like multiculturalism to coexist. And we would be very, very screwed without it. So I want to say yes to both. And really we try to say yes to both. And there's you can't ever rest on anything. What is this moment calling for? What is this relationship calling for? What is this particular collective calling for? And that's a moment to moment thing. Like one collective, one night is available for some stuff that the next night it's not available for whatever reason. They didn't have enough coffee. Um, and so there's something similar with fun where like most of us are used to when we're in social situations, we're joking around, like you and I were joking around, especially postmodern fun is very like meta self-deprecating. It's like always kind of like making fun of whatever's happening in a given moment and making light of it, right? And so there's a move that I think is in integral language is often a like green to teal or 4.0 to 4.5 move of re-embracing seriousness.
Mm.
It's okay to be serious. I can penetrate the pluralistic, aperspectival, like meta humor with I fucking care.
Mhm.
And a beautiful version of this, I think, is something like Ted Lasso or Schitt's Creek. They really have this multi-perspectival point of view that they penetrate with being willing to be serious and care about stuff, where something like Rick and Morty doesn't.
Mm.
You feel it occasionally, like it comes through. So if you guys don't know these pop cultural references, these are TV shows, and you're fucked. You'll
My
find
plus one Ted Lasso. So good.
it's so good.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah, beautiful.
So often what happens is if we in development, and you know this, but whatever, I'm going to say it again. When we're developing from one phase to the next, we're usually pushing against where we came from
Mhm.
and saying it's bad and wrong. And that kind of creates this pressure for us to grow in a healthy way, but it often means that if we're in a community that only has one developmental level, we're we're really unbalanced in a particular extreme. So I think this happens a lot in those communities you're seeing where they're trying to push against this kind of nihilistic aperspectival hell, essentially, or aperspectival madness, to quote Gebser, and in trying to find something that matters. And there's another version of that when right at a deep kind of a construct aware, like, oh shit, it's all just constructs, and so like nothing really matters, I guess. I don't know. I guess I can choose out of the infinite mattering, like and so there's these kind of the spins around, and the seriousness is not wrong, and part of our job is to say a hell yes to that. Like the seriousness is really great, it's really beautiful, it's really helpful. We're all smattered across all developmental levels, so we probably need that as an antidote for something, and that doesn't get to dominate. What gets to dominate is truth love in any given moment, is like the moment's truth love showing itself through and as us.
Mhm.
And anything that gets in the way of that is secondary.
Mhm.
It's still welcome, but it doesn't get to capture the flag.
Yeah. So how does one know when what is being experienced is truth love or not?
Right. Um, in some ways, you never get to know. You have to kind of take a leap of faith and then get feedback. And you just keep getting feedback and you keep getting feedback and it cleans you up, right? And you, again, you know this, but you get better and better at sensing, oh, there was something, wow, I really wanted this and this thing happened and I'm really glad that was even better, so I can follow that. Or like, wow, I really wanted this thing and this terrible other thing happened, that's not very good, or it didn't exactly what I wanted, the opposite happened, so that probably wasn't truth love. So there's a sense in which like you just keep taking leaps of faith and listening and staying open to impact. And that's one of the real powers of relatefulness, is staying open to the impact that most people don't do. It's like they take a leap of faith, they're vulnerable, and then they're like, fuck, and they close down.
Mhm.
And you have to stay open, and you keep staying open. You keep staying open to being wrong. And you keep staying open to being wrong about the past and wrong about the future and wrong about the now. And so there's this kind of continual leaping of faith into mystery or into uncertainty, and but with confidence.
Mhm. Yeah, I wish you were. If you were a beautiful woman, I would propose to you right now. I feel like you're speaking my love language, Jordan. You're really turning me on.
I'm bashful now. Thank you. I hope you find a woman that speaks this way.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, yeah, it could be the best thing or the worst thing. It could
Right?
be. Oh, man, Jesus. Let's see. I'm curious about the length of the gathering. Was it what, 5 days? And how this is something I've been reflecting on with the last CC gathering. It was the shortest one that we've had thus far. And the main number, like the overwhelming feedback that we keep getting is that people wish it was at least 1 day longer. And that there is a sense of just beginning to like really drop in and deepen on the last day. So I'm curious about, yeah, the art of the length of these types of collective gatherings. And then also I'm curious about the financial aspect and if Relateful Camp was profitable, if there was an attempt to reach a certain profit margin, and then where that profit is are people getting paid to do what they did, or was it an all volunteer thing, etc.?
Yeah. Awesome. Which one first?
First one first.
Okay, what was the first one again?
The
So,
number, the art of the length of the time, and maybe I'm
yeah.
curious, do you have plans for a Relateful co-living house that's a month-long deep dive or something like that? Are there other forms and lengths that might take on?
Yeah. I literally last weekend just suggested that to that Michael Bloss should do a month-long retreat because I think he would love it and it'd be fun. Yeah, I think there's a place for all of it, really. I've found 4 days is a really great length. Like that's when we do our level ups. We do 4 days. I've done longer events. I've done week long. I've done 5 days, and um, I'm extremely. I find it extremely valuable to integrate practice into everyday living. So our level up training, there's a lot of like one-on-one sessions that are just like throughout the week, so that you're getting kind of like a coaching, or you're you can do these like intensives, but then you continuously integrate that into the day to day. Otherwise, you get this kind of rubber band, this like workshop high. It's kind of like just taking a drug. Cool, you get a bunch of insights, but now what? Um, and so yeah, I find that for me, or so far in the past decade plus of doing this, like in this particular cultural context we're in, 4 days is a workable time. Like people can take off 2 days from work and and then use a weekend or use a holiday weekend or something. And five can be good. And Relateful Camp was actually 4 nights, 5 days, and then the facilitators were like a day before was 6 days. Um, so that it really can be good for a special event. But yeah, it starts to start. If it gets too much longer, it starts to feel like a separate world, and it becomes harder to bridge the insights.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I had this cool experience at this thing, but now I don't know how to bring it into my life because everything was so different there for a whole week.
Yeah. It's like Burning Man. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, but we do 2.5 day immersions. We do 2 day immersions, and those are really great for certain people. Again, there's a lot of context, right? Like the money also, like you can, if you do a shorter event, you can charge less for it, and then more people can afford it. Um,
But before the financial piece, just a quick question on you said there are 80 people. Do you sense that Relateful Camp would have been drastically different if there were 120 people or if there were 25 people? Like, or was it more or less the same thing, just with different levels of intimacy?
it was the perfect number. I think if we would have had less, so there was something beautiful that happened where like I mentioned, like I slept in, I went to some sessions, I skipped a lot of sessions, I just really relaxed and had cool. I'd run into somebody and just have a really great conversation and skip a session, or prepare for my thing that I was leading the next hour or whatever. And I was delighted to hear that everyone did this. Everyone had a really relaxed time and did what they needed to do to take care of themselves. And all the sessions were full. Like there was plenty of people. Whenever somebody had a sign up, like a cap, it was full. And there were sessions that had 10 people, and that was like, people were like, thank God, that was the exact number I wanted. There were sessions that had 60 people, and that was the number that needed to be there. So there was something like, it was just right. Especially for the first year doing it. I wouldn't have wanted less because I don't know if we would have had like, yeah, the sessions filled with also people being able to be so flowy. For the first year, if we could have accommodated a few more, I think, but it was the perfect number. And now I'm excited to have 120, 150, 200. I even could imagine a few more, but I would also love to grow slowly because it allows us to organizationally like continue to embody the vibe that we're asking the world and sharing with the world of like, we can just do it in flow. We can do it almost effortlessly.
Well, so there's a number of people, but then also what percentage of the people of those 80 were already familiar with the Relateful practice? And what do you do when you have half the people that are there that have never heard of Relateful? They maybe have never really even done a we-space practice before. And how do you create a culture and an ecosystem that can allow those people to be there as well?
Yeah. I mean, that's one reason why I'm super grateful for this numbers. Like there's a number of people like you, like Forrest, like Hannah. There's like tons of people that were my dad that considered going and for whatever reason decided not to. That I love, that are beautiful people that do things very relatefully, but aren't like core relateful community members. And I'm actually, I think it's perfect. It was only people that were essentially like really core relateful people. So it sets the field. And there were new people. There were like Annabeth's moms came, and they had never done the practice before. There were definitely people that were fresh. Someone brought their brother. It was mostly family. But but yeah, it was people who were really, really into this particular way of being, which I think is perfect and right for setting the field. And now I'm excited to expand and invite more people because we already have half those people signed up again for next year. And we don't even have the dates yet. So like that field is going to carry forward and people will come back into it and there'll be an energetic signature that people come into. And then we'll have the tribes, the connection crews, and that will help. And we'll actively create it so that not just randomly, but so there are, if we don't recognize this person's name, they're going to be with somebody who we know super well and knows the practice well. So that you can do, so I think I personally, there's a great place for practicing with people who are only extremely well practiced. Um, but then you limit yourself to only going deep with people who can go deep with you. And I think that the world right now needs a lot more than that. We need a lot of what Roger Walsh will call Gnostic intermediaries,
Mm.
right? So I lead an open night every week with new people. And I encourage my facilitators who are extremely practiced to come and be with new people because that's where the real, once you get to a certain level, that's where the hardest practice is. How do you stay in flow? How do you stay in ownership? How do you stay in not needing anything to change and not needing anyone or anything to be different and loving what is when somebody is not at all following anything that you care about in this practice? How do you show up in a way that invites them to show up in their best self without needing them to be different?
Mhm.
So yeah, so we're practicing that, we're inviting that, and then there's a space for like, yeah, we'll organize the session. So if we find out like the way I like to lead is I come up with a plan and then I see who's actually in the room and change it. And so we will do the same thing with camp. We'll have a session scheduled and suddenly if we find out, wow, there's way more new people that don't know the practice than we realize, we'll add a bunch of fundamental sessions. We'll tap a bunch of facilitators to lead basic practices, or we'll say, hey, like let's do it tonight's night before we do our whatever. Let's do half an hour where we make sure that like a newbie finds an experience, like raise your hand if you're experienced. Okay, now newbies glom around an experienced person and we'll do a practice.
Beautiful. Yeah, love it. All right, I want to ask about the financial aspect, and then I have a question about CC after, and we're coming up at our time. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so financially, we made a little bit of money, which is fantastic. We were very happy to do the event for the sake of itself. It's always the Relateful company is extremely mission driven. So money is great. It's like calories for the body. You need them. And my life is not about intaking calories. It's about doing beautiful things. So it's similar. Like we need money. We like money. We want to be healthy and have the right amount of calories and healthy calories. We want healthy money, the right amount of money. It flows. It should be flowing in and out. But it's there so that we can do our mission. We can create beautiful things in the world. So it's super, super wonderful to have created something beautiful, make a little bit of money. And I think we will grow. Like partly so yeah, we paid our staff, Annabeth, Liz, Philip, like to do the work, to organize. And then there was a lot of fixed costs, like, we had shuttles for people, we had food, we had the camp, these kinds of things. So the camp, I think we ended up paying them $40,000. Um, something, it's a pretty big chunk of money.
Oh,
Which is also great. Like I'm like this, I love spending money. I love that like and I love this camp. They're really
you grew up
they're
going there, didn't you?
I grew up going there. Yeah.
Special.
It's very special. So and I don't actually, because I wasn't that involved in the organizing, these numbers are rough estimates. It might be a lot more, it might be a little bit. I think it was at least that. So yeah, we made a little bit of money. Like probably I could make as much money leading, like when I lead a New Year's event and it's a special event, we have 20 people show up. I probably make just as much money as the camp made. So from a profit standpoint, it's not like oh my God, that's the best. But that's not at all that important to me. And it'll grow. I think we will make a bunch of money next year, and that's going to be exciting. I'd like to, there's a lot of cool things we can do with making a bunch of money.
Awesome. Well, I have yeah, curiosity around constructing consciousness. You've been to a couple of the events, and it's interesting because what I'm hearing is that you guys started as a practice. You had a practice that was solid that you've been doing for, I think you said a decade, and there was a whole collective, a community that grew up in and as that practice and practiced the practice together. And then the camp sort of emerged from there. And it's interesting because CC is almost the opposite, not quite, because there was a model, and that model had a community. This is the Stages International model. But there wasn't really a practice that people related to each other in using that model. It was, it was all, I guess, theoretical and online workshops and whatnot. And so then it was like, well, CC came together and we were just sort of like, well, how do we just be together and be human together? And we can have this framework, but we can also drop down and just relate as humans. But what humans are we relating with? And is there a certain way of relating that is unique to these particular humans that are curated and together for this short period of time? And now, after a year and a half of doing various different experiments of that, if what I'm sitting with after the last gathering is actually creating a practice, like creating a living practice that is evolving, that is emerging, that is, but is also formed into something concrete that can be shared with others, that can be held by a core group of people that practice the practice together enough to invite people into something that they can not just feel like they're a part of a field, which can be sort of this esoteric, energetic sense of like, wow, there's a vibe that's different here, which is what a lot of people say, but also to have a flow and a structure and a holding and principles and various smaller practices within this larger living practice that allow for CC to grow beyond its rather small bubble. In terms of, there's only maybe like a couple hundred people around the world that would even consider themselves a part of the Stages community in that way. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm curious for you. I feel a little bit vulnerable asking, but I feel like I've just learned so fucking much in the past hour of talking to you. And um, based off your experiences with CC and then based off your experience with Relateful Camp, like I'm wondering what maybe uh I'm almost like I want like free coaching from you or something like that. But maybe more so it's just like where are they overlapping and where it sounds like we're humming on such a similar, like there's so many little and big ways that we're sharing a similar vision and calling forth people into a similar experience. And there's also distinctions and differences, and yeah, I think in a way CC is a much newer. It's like a newborn baby still in many ways. And Relateful Camp feels like it's, yeah, when I hear you speak, it sounds like it's like this teenager that's really finding itself and finding its form. And it's like, yeah, like we did it and this is awesome. And CC is still like, this is really cool, but we're still like, is this my hand? You're like, yeah, I think this is my hand.
Yeah.
It still is like
Yeah.
it's innocence in a way. So
Cool.
I'm just gonna put that all out there and see if anything's percolating in you.
Yeah. A bunch of things percolate, but where my attention really goes is like when you said free coaching, I'm like, yeah, great. Like, um, I like that frame and because it brings a different attitude out of me. Like,
Mm.
and the first, like in that mindset, I'm like, what's the question? What is it you're wanting? I actually am, can you, let's just see if we can bring a little more clarity.
Yeah, sure. So when you were just at the last CC gathering, for example, in Colorado about 2 weeks ago, and you had just come off of finishing Relateful Camp, was there anything where you're like, damn, like Relateful Camp has this down and CC is still struggling to get this piece, or like they're still learning this insight that maybe we just learned or implemented really well? And are there any, yeah, either like cultural aspects or story framing aspects or structural aspects that Relateful Camp is doing and it has done that CC might be able to implement that could really help it thrive?
Yes, but before that, like, if what do you get if you get that? Like if I give you the answers, what are your what gets fulfilled or what?
It feels like my back would straighten up more and that there would be a sense of because I didn't study this. I have a photojournalism degree and I was a filmmaker, and so I know how to be a film director on set with 100 people running around, and we're all telling a story together, and we're all in service of this larger unfolding. And so in many ways gatherings are very similar to that, but there's also a sense of like I'm just totally learning all of this on the fly, and somehow I feel a sense of responsibility for there's something that I am stewarding or holding that is having a really important impact on people's lives, and not just any people, but some of my closest friends, like people that I love the most and my heart is most open to. And so yeah, there's a sense of like I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to absorb and soak in as much wisdom as possible. And that's how I feel when I hear you speak.
Right. So one thing I'm hearing is that there's a little doubt in you. You're like, fuck, I haven't learned how to do this, and I don't know if I can trust the way I'm showing up.
I think that the doubt, yeah, for sure. But I think on an intuitive level, like everything you're saying, I've already been like, I sense that, I sense that, I've sensed that. But it's different when your body feels it, then it has to like go up and into the mind and then come out through, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
um, so I'm in that process right now where it's like, yeah, my intuition feels really spot on a lot about a lot of this stuff, but it
Yeah.
hasn't always found its way out into form, concrete form.
And you want it to. You want to let that into
Yeah,
concrete
it
form.
feels that feels like a caring, loving way I can be in the world right now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Okay, so just for fun, let's see like we're kind of looking at like what's in the way of that. Or like you could imagine like immunity to change or existential kink or something like um for a moment, if you imagine, let's just like imagine you can feel that in intuition and you're like um your intuition is connecting with your words and it's like becoming concrete. What bad thing happens if you really connect your intuition to your words and it becomes concrete?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there is a bad thing. I don't feel a fear around it. I feel just a sense of um it just feels like it's emerging through me, and it's in the process. But yeah, it's not that I feel blocked in doing that. It's that I feel like it's that's like saying, what's the fear of pushing out the baby? And it's like, no, I'm like trying to push out the baby, and it's like it's coming out, but it just hasn't, it's still in the process of birthing itself, you know.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, yeah, it might not.
I could answer the question, but it feels like I feel like I'm stepping into that right now, and I don't feel a sense of fear around it, more a sense of like creative excitement and sort of almost an innocence as well. Of like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not necessarily looking for a fear. And I'm looking for maybe even just a somatic sensation of like you're like
mm,
imagining being in the world that has already happened. The
mm,
baby's born.
mm.
And is there some sort of like discomfort or pull or
Well, one
not?
thing that I think I felt discomfort with is when I heard how big your team was and how there are these different cascading waterfalls of people's involvement. And with CC, it feels like, yeah, I've had a few partners that have stepped back for various reasons and just personal reasons related to them. Um, and it feels like, yeah, I'm trying to get feedback from one of the people that helped me, and like I haven't been able to schedule a phone call with him for the past 2 weeks because it's been super busy. And so it feels like there's a little bit of sense of like, even though there's so much enthusiasm and love and celebration of CC and of me, I also feel quite alone in the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just connecting with the what you said about the big team, like you feel alone now, and your sense is if you were trusting yourself more, you'd be more alone.
If I trusted myself more, I'd be more. No, but maybe it's a little bit of like doing, like really going for it, and I can't one man band this, like to really grow this thing into a living practice that has multiple scaffoldings of, people's investment. Then I really need people to come on board and hold that with me. And I very much see that happening, but right now in this very moment, I do feel like it's something that I'm holding alone, and I'm kind of like, I'd love to share this with people and like grab a bite.
Right.
And maybe if I had more, if I if that process of the wisdom in me had a little bit more concrete form and words and specificity, that might create a more robust invitation for people to join in that process.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's drop it. We were playing with the frame of like probably what you're already getting is healthy and good for you in some way. Maybe not anymore, but like it's intelligent and wise. Like there's some good reason why you can't yet put it into that form. It's serving you in some way. And when we can see and honor that way that it's serving you, it's much easier to then step into a new way of being, because you can either be like, oh, that's not serving me anymore. Thanks for what you've done so far. Or you can be like, yeah, actually I can let go of the new way I want because I just really like what I'm getting currently. Um, but I don't think we got there. So alas. Um,
I don't know if
although
I don't know if I think I might have missed the last, where didn't we get to?
so some clarity about what you might be getting from the current reality,
Mm,
like some good that you're getting from the current reality that you would lose from some new reality.
mm. Yeah, I don't know if I would like, I feel really ready to move into the new reality. I feel just mostly just pure excitement, tons of creative flow, tons of downloads. Like, so I don't know if there's some block. I think me inviting you onto this podcast and asking you all these questions is part of that evolutionary process of the wisdom. It feels like there's an intelligence that lives as the CC organism, and it's coming through me right now, coming through you, and it's like it's not lost on me that like the cosmos itself is becoming more intelligent about how to hold to these types of collective gatherings through this very moment, this very podcast, this very conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So all I want to say to that is like whatever things I see that I'm like, oh yeah, here's some things that I liked at Relateful Camp that maybe CC can have more of. Um, One is like it's really that frame. It's not like you're doing anything, it's missing anything. It's just like here's some potential, some possibilities, which but I think it's worth sometimes just saying outright again, like seeing what's possible doesn't invalidate what is.
Sure.
Um, and then and then I want to speak into the collective that you're gathering. So I'm not like giving you, Tucker, information that you now have to like shoulder on your own on your lonely like CC quest, but rather like the beginning of like maybe it's some sort of wisdom collective thing that you'll be like digesting and then sharing with whoever it is. So it's not all on you, or even at all any on you potentially, to take anything I say and make a difference.
I got it. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels
Uh,
relaxing.
okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. And it may be that what you're really doing is giving me an invitation. The next CC gathering I'm in, I can step up more and bring these very things.
Yeah. Totally.
Maybe you've already done your requisite part
Mm.
in that sense of you're like, oh, consciousness is getting more wise, like through us. It's happening through me too.
Yeah.
In regards to CC.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a frame of like, I only know what we all know. You know what I mean? Like everything I'm learning is not, I don't necessarily sense it's some individual intelligence that I hold that is discerning something that's happening that everyone else is blind to. It feels like a collective blooming of wisdom that maybe my unique role in the collective is the synthesizer of it. You know, I can like I'm available, I have energy, and I have the storytelling capacities to do that. But it feels very much like it's the collective itself that is learning and informing itself, you know.
Yeah. 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 So, okay. One thing that jumps to mind is for whatever reason, the CC culture is extremely oriented towards like acknowledgement and gratitude and kind of like, yeah, like goodness in a way that is like um really nice, and I think blocks dark dark feelings or more human things from the kind of like public collective. So it's still welcome, like like, but it happened literally in the basement for me. Like it's like, oh, now I'm in the like sauna, and I'm like now feeling all these dark energies come out, and I'm like rapping and saying weird shit, and like, and it was like, oh yeah, like this is for some reason ups 2 levels up in the upstairs, like when we're all together, that's not coming. And and it's tricky. So like, yeah, how much do I want to say? Yeah. Yeah, there's always the potential of like over indexing on that, on like we've talked about earlier an hour ago. But my sense is that like the the practice, especially like in a whole group, can lean into a lot more like discomfort, uncertainty, disagreement, not always synthesizing, but sometimes standing in poles, not trying to be meta-aware, not like really truly having a wider embrace of the whole developmental spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's room for this. Like there's no one resists it. Like I literally put on Kendrick Lamar, right? Like um in the whole room, and people didn't react negatively. Um there may have been some teasing, but it was like good natured.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I think you're right to be focusing on practice. I think because the stages model was like the bed from which this arose, like there's often a collective orientation towards maps, even if we're holding them lightly and in a construct aware way. I was looking for some other word for that and I couldn't find it. In awareness of the co-enactive way, or the like that the map is not the territory and the maps are useful. So that's great. I love that. I love maps. I really, really love maps. And yeah, I think that we, as a CC community, we probably are still a little over indexed on that. And we need to find ways um, to bring in practice in a non-controlling way. So what I mean by that is like we're pretty good at being like, let's now dance. Let's now do like like now we have a frame of a context where we can do a thing that's not the thing we've been doing.
Mhm.
And I think we can do a better job of having it be fully integrated. In like at Relateful Camp, for example, like it's very common for somebody to like, if we're in a circle, to get up and move to another position in the circle, to literally stand, or not everyone is sitting, not everyone's standing. We're using chairs, not backjacks. Like there's a kind sometimes, you know, there's a whole mix of things where it's like there's just more actual, even just like on a physical literal level, more actual physical literal movement. And it's a subtle thing. There's a bunch of subtle things like that. I don't mean that it's going to do the trick. I mean, there's like 20 things like that are not off the table right now, but just don't happen very much.
Mhm.
That I think as a collective, we want to be happening a lot more often. so yeah, like, so let me try to name 10 of those little things that, like, to be concrete, like, yeah, like moving around the space, getting into conflict with somebody, publicly, standing in a poll, and facing the vulnerability of being seen as less developed for it, um, embracing lower developmental levels, and not having to context that, but just doing it. Um, being, yeah, just leaning into, um, non-golden rain, honey rain,
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a deeper trust. Like, there's so, like, the universe is so much that we can lean more fully into it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And trusting people to take care of themselves, and receive the care that they need from each other whenever they need it. So we don't have to take care of them unless we're truly called to it in any given moment. Yeah, I think, again, I see all of these things as available and happening, but we can kind of turn up the volume on them, and the frequency, especially in the public domains.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, Jordan, and yeah, it's super helpful. And also noticing that each gathering really is also its own pendulum swing. And so the last big gathering was in Ontario. We had one in Australia and New Zealand that were much smaller, but the last big one was in Ontario. And Ontario had a lot of darkness, a lot of tension, a lot of being in the polarity, a lot more movement because we were in a much bigger retreat center outside in nature. It was gorgeous. And it was interesting because a lot of the narrative, or a lot of the frustration, I would say, was this idea of like, we're supposed to be these later stage people that are coming into collective coherence and having this like collective flow state, and instead we're like not cohered, and it's weird and icky, and there's like stuff coming up for people. And yeah, it was really interesting because like some people were loving that, loving the darkness and the embrace and the polarity and the duality and the earlier kind of expressions of anger and frustration that were coming out. And other people were just like really not we're wanting that honey rain, CC love fest kind of like cuddling into goodness. That, yeah, maybe has its own aspects of spiritual bypassing or whatever label you want to give it, but it's just you could just call it another flavor. It doesn't need to be anything negative or birthed from any type of shadow, even though we can construct our point to that as well. But it's just ultimately it's like a different flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, yeah. And, personally, I'm a little neutral on the concept of coherence.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great when it happens, but sometimes chaos and incoherence is incredibly generative.
totally.
I don't think later stage people are always coherent. That, to me, seems like a earlier stage projection fantasy of like being okay. And I think the reality is that the later you are, the more okay you are with not being okay.
I agree in theory, and then in practice, yeah, it's
And just
interesting to see different people's reactions and yeah, how that plays into their own nervous systems or whatever. Yeah.
And yeah, and it's tricky because then as an organizer, you have to be ready for people to really not like the event and not like you and not like the way you're holding it and disagree. And how do you say yes and incorporate that wisdom while also saying a full yes to yourself and the thing you're bringing? And I find when I'm leading this kind of stuff, I'm often, I mean, partially Relateful Camp, like you said, we've been doing this for many, many years. And so I've worked through a lot of these kinks, like in myself, like, for example, I want people to have a good experience. Like, I have felt very, very deeply into that and found how it connects to my childhood and all. Like, I want to like earn value, like that I exist at all. Like, I should like, there's a deep sense of like in that mindset that like if I don't give the good thing, um, somehow I've invalidated my reason for being and all the good shit that I've received in my life.
Mhm.
It's like existentially terrifying.
Mhm.
And I've followed that down into the feeling of terror and stayed there for a very long time, like many, many times. And so now I feel pretty relaxed. I'm relaxed about people not getting what they expected. I'm relaxed about trying to make the expectations clear as much as possible. I'm relaxed about the fact that I'm never going to succeed at that. Like there's always going to be something I couldn't capture in the context, and that trying to capture it all has its own cost. There's Gödel's incompleteness theorem of context, basically. Um, and I've kind of like been through the ringer in myself and like in my motivations, and that allows me to be really, really open, I think,
Yeah.
and host an event from a very open place. And we may just not be there yet as a collective. We may need a few years of going deep into ourselves. I felt that for sure. I've only done 2 of the CCs, so for sure my feedback is fresh off the last one, and only out of 2 when you've done a dozen. Like, but I felt that a real, especially in the first one, like there was a lot of us, I think, that were like trying to present our best selves to each other,
Mm.
which makes sense. We're like, wow, like we've been rated at these high levels of development, and like who are we, and who's this other person, and do we like each other, and are they going to like me, and like um and my hope is that we can just like that then is what we need to work on. We're not working on higher level stuff, then we're working on like belonging. We're looking at best, we're working on 2.5.
Hmm.
That's fine. Like that's cool. Let's do that together. We
Yeah.
can bring all of our higher order capacities into that sheer like am I part of the group?
Yeah. Somebody who hasn't been to a CC gathering, but we're speaking about these types of gatherings, named the pattern being that people are meeting as a 4.0 collective in order to heal 2.0 shadows in order to have 6.0 state experiences. And I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds very accurate for a large number of folks who are coming to the gatherings, myself included. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I love just being honest about that. Like that's real, that's true, that's cool. Like, and that's part of what we can do as we soften and relax is like yeah, I can feel where I think I knew this and I could have spoken to it more. I remember a moment that I decided not to, and I can't remember why I decided not to, but like even in that first opening session, I almost said something about like how much we're like, yeah, like I think a lot of us are in that, like figuring out how to show up in a way that's um, like, am I okay? Am I liked? Am I part of this?
And
And
does
maybe yeah,
not
go ahead.
does that not show up at Relateful Camp, or how does that show up differently, or how do you work with that differently?
Yeah, so I think partly it does, there is an aspect of like we are, like you said, we're a teenager, like we've been around for over a decade. And so we've worked through a lot of that. We have a lot of facilitators who know that they're a part of it. Um, but it does certainly show up. And part of what we did, like we had a facilitator who has a big thing about belonging. And that first day when it was just facilitators, part of what happened is he's like, yeah, I don't know if I trust you guys yet.
Mm.
And my response was like, good. Um, I don't want you to trust me until I've earned it. And so a lot of what we were doing with each other was like giving each other permission. Like, yeah, if you don't know if you belong, like stay there. I'm not going to pretend like you belong because I fucking don't know. Maybe we're not your tribe. And maybe you need to go away from this being like, well, that company's cool, but I'm not into it. Um, so I think it's like a real openness. And I really encourage that throughout. Like if I'm doing like what it's essentially a sales call for like a training, it's the same thing. I'm like, relatefulness is wonderful. I hope it's for anyone, but it's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah.
And has permeated through our culture. We're not evangelical. We're not, I don't know what's good for someone or not. It's part of even how we coach. Like you know best. And my job is to help you figure out what you already know.
Yeah. I just want to interrupt because I'm having a little insight. which is that because CC is somewhat based off exclusivity, which dates back to the lineage of the map and the metaware aspect of it, there's almost a need subconsciously, probably for most people, to prove their worthiness of being in the making the cut, so to speak, which brings up all those, high school, middle school shadows. Did I make the dodgeball team? Am I
Yeah,
gonna and that's hard because we're not for everyone. Like we're not for anyone and we're not for everyone. Like we're explicitly attempting to not be that. And people are paying money and flying from across the world or across the country to be there because it's not for everyone and anyone. And
right,
so how to be with that reality and also to know that that's going to play into people's shadows and
right.
earlier stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a cool thing to name more explicitly. Not necessarily even, I mean, yeah, in the event it's fine, but like so a lot of the context you can set in the way it's framed in the first place. Like in the event invite or registration page, it's like, yeah, this is an exclusive event. The fact that you're able to purchase this means you're already invited, and that might bring up some shit for you, which we can work with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
yeah.
remember naming something like that during the opening circle, the last gathering, of just being like, a lot of times people wonder, like, do I belong here? Am I okay here? And I was like, I promise you, if you're here, you belong and you are part of the family, period. And I like did my best to like really name that explicitly. But we might need more reminders of that and more awareness of when people might be falling out of that remembrance.
Well, and it's so obvious that you can think you're not a part of it, and that's fine too.
Mm.
You're so much a part of the family. It just doesn't fucking bother us at all if you think you're not.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great reframe.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key thing. Like, and like that's the same thing with awareness or like being, awakeness in a certain sense. Like it's so fucking undeniably true. You can't get it wrong.
Mm.
You can't ever leave God's love. That's another way
Mm.
to say it.
Mm.
Right. No sin is too great to be unforgivable.
Yeah. I have
But
to, that's great, Jordan. It's beautiful
yeah.
bringing back to Christianity. I have to transition in 1 minute. I have one more question, which is around, yeah, cohering the community and keeping people a part of something. For Relateful Camp, the 80 people that were there, do y'all have some sort of an online platform or community? And how is that going? Are people engaged with it? And yeah, how do you stay? And then when's the next Relateful Camp planned for?
Yeah, we're really lucky. Well, lucky slash, back in 2014, I started creating this online community. We launched in 2015. It's practice oriented. So we have, I think, 51 sessions a week. I just counted. That people that are all time zones that are led by facilitators that people can show up for. And that's open to the whole community. So it's not just Relateful Camp. It's open to anyone. Anyone who's listening to this can go to relateful.com and go do a session or get a membership or whatever. And then, of course, it's not including the in-person sessions we have in Austin. So, and that's not including weekends and all that stuff. So we have the community is very practice oriented. Like our Facebook group is kind of like how to connect after you've been in a session. And I think this makes a really big difference. It's not like a chat thread that like where like it's hard to do real practice, even with really, really skilled people over a chat thread asynchronously. I'm definitely thinking about that and working on that problem. But like being in person, having a video and being like, now we're in presence and we're going to be honest and we have an hour and we have a facilitator that can help us, like that's really, really different. And so that's essentially the integration is like, come on the platform. We've got that. We've got you. So there's a whole ecosystem that supports that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love
And then it'll be first or second weekend of April, but it'll be confirmed.
it. It'll be
Yeah.
hopefully an annual event.
Yeah. Annual. Yeah.
Very cool. Jordan,
Love
thank
you
you.
so much.
Love you too. Yeah, I really, really appreciate this. This is beautiful. Can't wait to
Yeah.
get it out.
Boom.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Lots of love. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest and excitement.
By the way, I know you know this, but you're fucking awesome.
What too?
Thank you. Ciao, brother.